All right, today we're going to start to talk about the geography of ancient Egypt and how it played a very large role in the establishment of the ancient civilization of ancient Egypt. Much like the other ancient civilizations that we talked about, life in ancient Egypt was centered around a river, more specifically in this case, the Nile River. And the Nile River was basically considered to be the lifeline of ancient Egypt. And in fact, many people called Egypt the gift of the Nile because of the very fertile farmland that was surrounded the Nile River Valley. Much like we talked about in or with the other ancient civilizations we talked about, there were four main reasons why people established their livelihoods around these rivers. Number one was because of the fact that it provided water for crops, as well as when the river flooded, silt into the soil, making the area around the banks of the Nile River very fertile farmland. Also, we had water for drinking, water for fishing to provide another source of food, and then the rivers also could be used for transportation, for trade, and just to kind of move up and down the rivers as people needed them or needed to. Some of the other major physical features that we are going to talk about is the Nile River Delta, which is located right here, and as it empties out into the Mediterranean Sea. And that's one thing you guys need to know too, is that the Nile River travels from south to north, so it goes in this direction as it works its way. And as it empties out into the Mediterranean Sea, all that leftover silt kind of deposited right here in this area that's kind of like a triangular shaped area. And it created the Nile River Delta. And the Nile River Delta basically is probably the richest, most fertile farmland found in the Nile River Valley, because all of this area is this rich, mineral-rich silt, and plus the fact that the rivers are so close to these particular areas. So it's a very valuable piece of land for people to own in this particular area as well too. Egypt was divided up into two parts, in Upper and Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt was in the south, kind of in this area right in here, and then Lower Egypt was in the north, in this area, and it followed basically the direction of the flow of the Nile River. So you guys really need to kind of pay attention to that, because more often than not, you guys would consider probably upper up here and lower down here, but it is switched because it follows the flow of the Nile River. So Lower Egypt in this area, Upper Egypt right here. These two kingdoms from time to time would come back together and unite and form a one unified Egypt underneath certain rulers and such like that. But for our purposes, for this point in time, it is basically there's two different areas within Egypt. So pretty much that's pretty much covers a lot of what we're going to be discussing with the physical features of Egypt. There is one other thing too, that along the Nile River there were some cataracts, which are basically rock-filled rapids. It made it very hard for travel along these particular areas, so the Egyptians had to make light enough, small enough boats that they could carry them around them as they were traveling up and down, trading with areas in the south and in the north of Egypt. So just another one of those things to kind of think about. But the big thing that we talk about with this video is the fact that the Nile River was the lifeline of the Nile, and the fact that it flowed from south to north and created the two kingdoms of Upper and Lower Egypt in ancient Egypt. We'll talk a little bit more about some other things coming up here shortly. So if you would answer the questions that I have set forth for you on the Ed puzzle setup here at the end, and I'll talk to you guys soon.